Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Giants won a game. In this episode, I'll break down the Tank Bowl, what went right, which is unusual for the Giants, and how this affects their draft and potentially all the other moves they might make in the offseason. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bet the Over. I'm your host, Kevbo, and we won a game. We won a game. Um, It is the second to last week of the season, penultimate game of the season, and the Giants did indeed defeat the Raiders. This was the big one that was coming up on the schedule. This is referred to as I refer to as the toilet bowl because both these teams were battling for pick number 1. The Giants did end up winning this game. In this episode, I'll break down the offense, the defense, the special teams, and we'll get into draft order and all that good stuff. So to start, let's go right into the offense. The final score was 34-10. As we all know, the Giants won. Jackson Dart did look pretty good in this contest. He went 22 of 30, 207 passing yards, averaging 6.9 yards per attempt. He took 2 sacks and he had a passer rating of 91.9, as opposed to Geno Smith, who went 20 for 28. So he actually had a higher completion percentage or similar, but comparable, for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, and he did throw 2 costly interceptions. Now, Dart wasn't just on the passing category, he was also in the rushing field because he ran the ball 9 times for 48 yards and had 2 touchdowns. And he's been, like, the whole season, he's been quite efficient on the ground. Let me get into Dart to start. So overall, Dart did have a good game. It was a relief to see him come back after last week. He looked terrible against Minnesota. So it was good to see him tear up the Raiders. Granted, they are the worst team in the league now. We can say that confidently, and this game confirmed it. They are the worst team. I think they just wanted to tank more than the Giants. But either way, they do have the number 1 pick now. Dart looked good. He looked decisive. He ran when he needed to. His first touchdown was a red zone draw, which was nice to see. I mean, you don't want him to take hits like he did, but he took the hit. He ran into the end zone. He looked good. The run game in general has been pretty good this past month and a half. I'd say since mid to late November. We had Devin Singletary with 8 carries, 45 yards, averaging 5.6 yards per carry. He had a touchdown. Tracy had 14 carries, 62 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. So both running backs and Dart had over 4 yards per carry, even 4.4, which is promising to see. That means the offensive line really got some movement. The offensive line has been the 1 point this season that hasn't been absolutely terrible, which is surprising because the Giants' offensive line in this past 5-6 years has been one of the worst O lines in the league. So that's one important point I would say to the season. I think they should continue to add. They need to add to the interior. You could look center because Schmitz has looked. He's very inconsistent. Some games it looks good, some games it looks bad. They still have Van Roten. They need to fill that gap because he's a bit older, and that's something they could potentially look to upgrade in the offseason. But overall, the offense did look good. They scored 27 of the 34 points. The other 7 points came from a kickoff return, which we'll get into later. So, while one big thing about the offense is that you can say is Dart definitely is a confident, capable, competent young NFL quarterback. And this does kind of silence the theory that people had about the Giants potentially taking Mendoza at 1. I have a video coming out this week. I broke it down last week about that whole speculation of Mendoza getting taken at 1 over Dart. I think that's honestly would be a completely ridiculous move. I think that is complete incompetency. If Joe Shane were to do that, I think he should be fired as soon as that happens because you have a good player in Dart. Drafting Mendoza would take on a lot of risks. I'll release that episode probably later this week. I was going to release it last week, but I actually ended up getting the flu. So I didn't do anything last week. I was literally in bed for since Saturday. So that's what I was doing all last week. It was terrible. Everyone try to avoid it as best as possible. But anyway, we'll get into the receiving yards now. Get off the flu rant. Wandale broke 1,000 yards in this game. Good for him. He's like the first 5'8" player to break 1,000 yards. I think since like the '80s. I remember seeing a stat on the screen. He's going to be an interesting player to see what they do in the offseason because he is a free agent. He's been their best wide receiver. Granted, Malik hasn't played since week 4. But I truly think he is a really good wide receiver too, or slot guy. Tracy got involved in the passing game. Darius Slayton had 3 targets, 2 receptions for 36 yards. I still think he should be off the team. He has costly drops after costly drops every single year. The Raiders, the 2 only wide receivers that did anything were Michael Mayer and Trey Tucker. Now, in this game, it truly just looked like the Raiders wanted to lose. Like, they didn't even seem like they were trying at all. They benched Crosby, even though he was healthy. He was posting on Instagram him playing basketball that week, even though he was on IR with a knee injury. So the Raiders just wanted to tank. It was so obvious. The Giants are not a good team, and the Giants looked like a Super Bowl contending team against the Raiders. They looked like they were so far beyond that. It was actually kind of crazy. This is the best it looked like the Giants have ever played football in my life. Now let's get into the defense. Okereke had that first pick of I think it was the Raiders' first possession or second possession. He had the pick in the red zone. Dane Belton had the other pick. Geno Smith literally threw it to both of them. I don't know what he was looking at. I think Geno Smith is going to be fired off a team, maybe even out of the NFL by the end of the season, or be a backup somewhere. But the biggest point on defense is Abdul Carter. This past month, he's turned it up. He really has. He's had a lot of controversy, a lot of people yelling at him. I remember Carl Banks was yelling, or no, that was Dexter Lawrence, but he was falling asleep in meetings, supposedly. He needed to mature, and hopefully he caught that message because this past 4 weeks, he's looked amazing. He's probably going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think that brings him up to like 4.5 or 5 sacks on the season now. He's had half a sack in the past 4 games. So we have something really promising in Carter. I was excited to see him. Brian Burns continues his amazing season. I think he's still in second place for sacks behind Myles Garrett, but even still, he had 1.5 sacks. You had Darius Alexander, the rookie defensive tackle, with a sack. Demetrius Flanagan fouls. He also had a sack. So overall, the Giants forced turnovers and they got a lot of pressure and sacks. It was good to see that they've been struggling to do either of those, not sacks, but turnovers throughout the season. The Raiders are just terrible. Defense, offense, special teams, just everywhere. The Raiders have holes everywhere. They truly, I think they needed the number 1 overall pick more, whether they take someone or trade down, but they just have holes all over the roster. It's kind of crazy to say, considering the Giants did what they did to them. Overall, this game, before we get the overall, I just want to say Deontay Banks did have a kickoff return. It was excited to see him get some action because he's been one of the big draft busts, I'd say, in the Joe Sheen era. He hasn't panned out. He does look pretty good at returning kicks, but I don't know if he's going to be on the team in years going forward. But it was fun to see him run one back. Overall, the takeaways from this game is that, yes, it was kind of bad that they did lose the game. They lost the number 1 overall pick. Now they're sitting at pick 2. But it was good to see the people that contributed, like the rookie Dart, Jackson Dart, the quarterback. It's good to see him contribute big to the win. He basically put the team on his shoulders. He ran it in twice. That right there would have been enough to defeat them. And then Abdul Carter's generating pressure, tackles for losses. One play, he literally almost, I guess it would have been a fumble recovery. He almost caught the ball out of Geno Smith's hands. He blew up the play so fast. He flew in like a missile. So overall, I know this season has been very underwhelming. Just overall, they have 3 wins. They just got their 3rd win. It's week 17. There's 1 week left. But you got to be I guess you got to be enthused by the rookies that the Giants have brought in Dart, Carter. Um, you have a sophomore in Malik Neighbors who's going to be junior next year, but third year guy. They have a lot of young pieces. Scattaboo has looked good. Alexander was making an impact there. They have a lot of young pieces, and it's going to be very intriguing to see what they do. I think the Giants will have a lot of um, they'll have a lot of attraction for the head coaching job. I know news broke today that the Notre Dame head coach isn't coming to the NFL, which some people were upset about. I don't really watch college football, so I've heard he's good, but I don't know exactly how he coaches or his teams that well. But anyway, the Giants are going to attract a lot of people because they have a young quarterback who's shown he can play. He's a baller. He has swagger. Uh, he makes plays when he needs to, and he's missing his number one guy. They got a young running back. Their offensive line was comparable this year. They were like middle of the pack, which you could always improve, but that's fine by me considering where they were last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And their defense has pieces all over the place. They have Brian Burns, who has the second most sacks in the league. They have Abdul Carter, who has looked amazing. Kayvon Thibodeau, we got to see what they're going to do with him because since his absence, that's what's really sparked Abdul to lock in and get all these sacks, 4 sacks in the past 4 games. Um, they need to work on their secondary and linebackers. That's a big need, but the defensive line is there. The offensive line is there. The quarterback is there, and that's the biggest thing. And I think that that's truly what coaches are going to look for when interviewing for this job. They'll see Dart, they'll see he's good, and they'll want to teach him and coach him up because he can really be something special in this league. And I know it does suck that they lost the number one overall pick, but they could potentially still trade down with like the Cardinals or someone. They're still ahead of the Jets. So maybe if the Browns, the Cardinals want to jump the Jets to take a quarterback, although Shador has looked all right so far, they could still trade down. So that's not completely out of the realm of possibilities. Also, the Raiders could still win next week, and the Giants would probably lose to Dallas, and the Giants would actually have the number one overall pick again. The Raiders play the Chiefs, and you might be like, oh, wow, the Raiders are terrible. However, the Chiefs don't have Mahomes, and they don't have Gardner Minshew, their second string quarterback. I don't even know who the third stringer is. So it's not necessarily a lock that the Raiders are going to lose. So we could still pray and hope that the Giants end up getting the number one overall pick. If not, they'll still be at number two. They've locked number two up, which is good. Um, yeah, that's basically it for this episode. Comment down below who you think the next coach should be. Comment what you thought of the game. I mean, it was a lot more scoring than I thought. That's the most scores I've seen the Giants have since I think the Broncos. Um, and I wasn't expecting that high of a scoring of a game. Overall, Dart, I like the way he played. I like the way the defense played and rallied. We got to get a head coach and we got to get some coordinators. And I truly think this team can turn it around. I think next year they can have 5, 6 wins just with a new coach, inspired the team. Hopefully, Dexter Lawrence comes out firing next year. This has been a really off year from him. Brian Burns continues to improve. And then in the upcoming episode, I'll break down the Dallas game and then we'll get into some offseason stuff, which is really fun because you can put all different scenarios in place and see, pick and choose and build a roster you think would compete next year. So once again, thanks for tuning in, guys. Happy holidays. And sorry for my nasally voice. Like I said, just getting over the flu. But thanks for tuning in. And remember, bet the over.